Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
It's going good, man. 2 games into the NBA Finals, and we're knotted up 1-1. That means we're at least not looking at a sweep.
Exactly. This NBA Finals, I mean, to be fair, the narrative I already brought for it is already dead. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's nice that we had a tied series, and it's going to be really interesting going forward to see how this series plays out. And we're going to talk about it all about it on today's episode. Going to be talking about all NBA Finals. We're going to be talking about some of the new coaching hires, and then we're bringing back the dual draft plus the quiz today. So it's going to be an action-packed episode. So you will not want to miss that. But before we start this episode, we do have to plug our socials. Remember to follow our personal accounts at the Knockdown J, at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. They can be found in the description below. And as for the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, remember to follow our TikTok and Instagram at the Hit Your Free Throws podcast for the best daily NBA content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. That would be highly, highly appreciated. Jay, are you ready to talk about these NBA Finals?
Yes, sir. Let's get into it, my man.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about starting with the coaches, but now we got to go right into the juicy stuff. Let's start with the NBA Finals talk. And like Jay mentioned it off the top, we are tied up at the series 1-1. The Denver Nuggets won in pretty convincing fashion in the first game, and the narrative seemed to be there. Oh, the Nuggets are too good. They're just too skillful. They just overpower the Miami Heat in talent. But man, in game 2. The Miami Heat made some adjustments. I mean, they have one of the best coaches in NBA history. They got an overperforming cast of players who are just hitting at the right time, and they were able to tie up the series 1-1. Jay, after watching these first 2 games, has your prediction changed in any way?
No, not really. I think one of the most notable things is that I think that if Miami was going to make this a competitive series, they were going to have to steal one of these original games. I told you beforehand, my biggest fear was maybe that game 1 was the game to be worried about because the Denver Nuggets were coming off of 9 days of rest. That's pretty abnormal, as opposed to a Miami Heat team that was coming off of a big time game 7, might still have the adrenaline rush from winning such a big game in the manner in which they did with guys playing 48 minutes. But at the same time, I mean, so far things have kind of went the way I expected them to in a way. I think that game 1, that the Denver Nuggets came out and set the tone. The altitude definitely kicked in. I also think that the rest was one of those things that didn't hurt them as much as maybe some would have expected. And in game 1, they forced Bam Adebayo to be very aggressive on the offensive end. And if you're going to score 26 points on 25 points on 26 shots or something like that, or vice versa, then like Mike Malone said, we'll live with that. If you're going to score on that kind of clip, I think the Denver Nuggets will live with that result. And on the flip side, in game 2, the aggression came more so from the 3-point line. Yeah, Bam Adebayo got his 21 and 9, but Miami shot much better from 3 this game along. Remember last game, Max Strus couldn't hit the net to save his life. Same thing with Duncan Robinson. In this game, they go together as 17 of 35 from the 3-point line. Those 2 guys in particular definitely shot the ball much better. When you talk about Max Strus, like I said beforehand, he was 4 of 10, high volume, but he hit his shots this go around. And Duncan Robinson was 2 of 3. Obviously, Gabe Vincent looks like a superhero of this game, especially because of the way he was able to help in closing time.
Yeah.
This is kind of the back and forth you would expect from a resilient Miami Heat team. I don't know if game 2 told us a ton about the Miami Heat's ability to win this series just yet. But I do think that they have shown that their shot making is translatable. I think now that they've gotten the rest that they needed in between that big time series, they're a team that's going to be able to get their legs underneath of them. And it sounds like this Tyler Hero element is going to kick in soon.
Yeah, 100%. And like, again, is this going to change anything about my prediction of the series? No. But what I did learn over these first 2 games is that, man, NBA fans are really like either leaning one way or the other. There's no middle ground in terms of NBA fans. After game 1 with the Denver Nuggets, they're like, oh, Denver is just too overpowered, hitting them with talent. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, that's too much. And to a certain extent, I mean, yeah, they are more talented, but game 2 showed why Miami Heat were even put in this position in the first place. I mean, We talked about it. Bam Adebayo had a good first game and also a good second game, but the other guys just couldn't hit shots. Jimmy, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, all of them. But in game two, I mean, the guys that were able to hit shots in the previous series, they came out to play. Gabe Vincent, 23 points. Key shots like late in this game, especially in the fourth quarter. Duncan Robinson went on a 10-0 run by himself, for goodness sake, at the start of that fourth quarter. These Miami Heat players, as shown all playoffs long, they're just able to come up in timely moments. Jimmy Butler, 21 points on 19 shots. Sure, it's not the best Jimmy Butler game in the world, but being able to take over that fourth quarter, getting whatever shots he wanted, it was absolutely key. And when you have that, and you have all the type of players like Max Strus having a fantastic first quarter with 12 points, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, when you have all those guys clicking, plus you have one of the best coaches of all time in Eric Spoelstra making those adjustments, making sure that Nikola Jokic didn't have the same passing lanes as he did in game one, the same type of like comfortability in terms of like feeding his teammates the ball. They're a team that is just good at making adjustments, and I think that's like an underrated factor about this Miami team. And like I mentioned, it people seem to be on all over the Denver Nuggets bad wings. Oh, they're like this is going to be an unfair series. The Miami Heat have shown us time and time again that they're able to bounce back from these sort of defeats, and that you just can't count them out. You can never count them out, and they're able to take one game at home. And look at that, already home court advantage for a team who has played pretty well at home. Again, same on the road, but they did their job. They're supposed to get one game there, and they've made it so the other players like on their team have just gained that confidence, saying, okay, we are now able to hit shots in the second game. Jimmy Butler has like let us like do our thing, make sure that we get our shots up, and it's resulting in very good opportunities, very successful game, a very successful game for the Miami Heat, and they were able to get the win. So yeah, this NBA Finals very back and forth. I didn't expect anything less. It's just I just find it funny how like NBA like discourse and NBA Twitter could just like flip from like completely one side of the spectrum to the other. There's no, oh, this is gonna be a completely close series. No. Now apparently the Denver Nuggets, the Miami Heat freaking figured out the Denver Nuggets now. I don't get it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing too is just the fact that I think Miami did something in game two that I think everybody expected would be necessary for them to even get a game off of the Nuggets, or really to force them into things that they don't want to do. Most notably, I think the most important part is Jokic ended this game with 41, 11, and 4. As far if you're Miami, especially if you listen to other players, like I remember Mikal Bridges was recently on a podcast and he was asked about guarding Nikola Jokic. And his basic mentality was when it came to the Phoenix Suns guarding Nikola Jokic in the postseason last year, their whole MO was to force him to be the scorer. He's the kind of guy that thrives off of being able to get his teammates involved, being able to get everybody else engaged. That's his play style. Him dropping 41 is not necessarily how the Denver Nuggets want to win games. Yes, they're capable. They were one Jamal Murray 3-point shot away from this potentially going into overtime and potentially winning off of the back of Nikola Jokic dropping 40 plus in this game. But I don't think that's the way that they want to win basketball games. Not when they have big time 3-point shooters like Jamal Murray, KCP, MPJ. Not when they have big time defenders that were playing up to their ability, like guys like Bruce Brown and Aaron Gordon who were locked in. They want to play all around everybody involved basketball. Nikola Jokic is the hub of all of that. Ending a game where Nikola Jokic only has 4 assists is actually your version of doing your job when it comes to guarding this Denver Nuggets team. So I think that's something to build off of if you're Miami heading back to Florida.
Yeah, 100%. And more importantly, 4 assists to 5 turnovers. An assist to turnover ratio that is very unfamiliar to Nikola Jokic, someone who is pretty safe at keeping the ball, but there was just very much like these sloppy plays. And I think Michael Malone talked about it after a game, the effort, the extra energy that they need in order to put themselves over the top in an NBA Finals game. They just did not show it yesterday. Nikola Jokic did his thing, but the extra effort, the defensive communication. I mean, there were so many times where Nikola Jokic, and I mean, Marcus has been telling us for forever not to try and like to criticize Nikola Jokic's defense. I'm kind of gonna like blame it here just because like he is not the best pick and roll defender, but there's too many times in this game where the Nuggets were just miscommunicating, not switching, not fighting over the screens, and it left Nikola Jokic on an island. I mean, what do you want the guy to do? He's a freaking 7-foot guy who's gonna run to like lug around, and this guy was getting abused because it's either he has to step up and try to defend a three, or Bam Adebayo, who had 21 points yesterday, had so many like free range to the basket. So because offensive communication was there, the effort wasn't there, and they forced again Nikola Jokic into something uncomfortable. 41 points, fantastic. Four assists to 5 turnovers, not great at all for the Denver Nuggets. And when you mix that and the effort that they showed yesterday, it just doesn't spell for a good for a winning formula, and that's why they weren't able to win on Sunday night. But Jay, I'm gonna ask you this question now because these first two games have shown us like kind of the best, kind of not the best, but like how we expected each of these teams to win in terms of their defensive game plan, the way that they're going to win on offense, and of course the Miami Heat role players had to step up huge. They did. The Denver Nuggets, everyone got like their fair share of shots in game one, which they did. We're gonna focus more on let's focus on the Miami Heat first because they were able to get this last win. How do you think they're going to be able to? How should they what should they do continue moving forward in order for them to ensure winning a championship, winning the next 3 games?
I think offensively, at the end of the day, shot making is the most important. I think if they're not going to be dangerous from beyond the 3-point line, this team is vulnerable. We learned throughout the entirety of this postseason that their guys can get hot. Matt Strus can hit the three at a high clip. Gabe Vincent can let it fly. Kyle Lowry can shoot it from distance. Obviously, we know what Duncan Robinson is as a shooter as well. If they're able to get a guy in Tyler Hero back, that really helps them, not in terms of just their shot creation, but you get another guy who can shoot it from distance. Offensively, their main thing needs to just be being able to knock down shots at a high clip, because guess what? The Denver Nuggets have gotten through this entire postseason hitting the 3-point shot at an unreal clip as well. That's why they're so hard to stop, because offensively, we know they are capable of putting points up in a hurry. Holding them to 108 in this game is an achievement all in itself when you talk about the kind of caliber that this offense plays with. Then defensively, the main thing comes down to, again, the formula of making Nikola Jokic be much more active as a scoring threat, forcing Nikola Jokic to be more of an offensive threat. Yes, if you just watch the highlights alone, Bam Adebayo had a very tough time playing against Jokic head up, and unfortunately, Bam Adebayo is actually the only person who really has any kind of fortitude against him in terms of this team. If you look at it, Kevin Love played 22 minutes. He was there to be active on the glass, but other than that, he was not very viable as a defender on Nikola Jokic. Bam Adebayo, there was a lot of possessions where he was put in a tough circumstance in terms of guarding in the post, and Nikola Jokic took advantage, and his physical frame really helped him out in a lot of different ways in terms of not him only being bigger than Bam, but a little bit more wide body than Bam in terms of his wingspan and things of that nature. So guarding Jokic is going to be a tough task as it is, but forcing him to actively look for his shot as opposed to trying to play the chess game of looking for how to get his teammates involved, that's the thing. You got to think about something that's most important when you talk about role players too. They always say that role players play best at home. But one of the other things that's super important with a guy like Nikola Jokic is if you can get your role players engaged, that's how you steal games on the road in the postseason, by getting when the role players play above their weight. For example, the Miami Heat in this game, right? When the role players play above their weight, that's when you put yourself in real contention to win games on the road in these kind of hostile environments. In going back to Miami, if Denver is able to get Aaron Gordon off to 12 points out the gate like he was able to do in game one, KCP hits a couple threes out the gate. If Michael Porter Jr. hits a couple threes out the gate, Bruce Brown's feeling pretty good offensively, and Nikola Jokic is able to facilitate all that, it's going to be a long game 3 for them.
Yeah.
But if it's another one of those games where Nikola Jokic drops 41 in 41 minutes, I think you live and die with the results of that in terms of how everybody else produces.
Yeah, 100%. And for the Miami Heat going forward, like you mentioned, I mean, they have proven that the key to them winning games is not to take over Jimmy Butler games. Yes, he's gonna have those. He's gonna have those games like from here and there because Jimmy Butler is just that great of a player. But a good chunk of their wins have been you get the 20 points from Gabe Vincent, you get the 12 to 13 from Max Strus. The Duncan Robinson gets his little boost. Kyle Lowry, who made some massive plays in game 2. When those guys are playing at their highest level and Jimmy Butler is able to like instill that confidence in them, sure Jimmy Butler can take over can like take every shot possible and you'll feel comfortable with it if you're the Miami Heat. But
Mhm.
you know you're playing at your best when everyone else is getting involved. You have the offense flowing, and it's not like the Miami Heat are some like otherworldly offense. A lot of their wins have been like 100 to 94, like those type of wins. And to be honest, I mean, like you mentioned, holding the Denver Nuggets to 108 is basically the equivalent to holding like a Boston Celtics team to like 94, 95 points.
Yeah.
That's basically the equivalent. And if you're able to outscore that, which the Miami Heat did in the last game, you're gonna take that. Defending Nikola Jokic, as much as Eric Spoelstra wants to say, oh, he's one of the best players in the world. Oh, we don't want him getting any of those shots up. This whole idea of him just making him a scorer is absolutely ridiculous. Sure, you don't want to say that because you're gonna be like, oh, you're asking like the best player in the league to beat you. It feels like that. But let's be honest, that's the way to beat the Denver Nuggets. That's how you're gonna do it, and there's no way like beating around it. Jamal Murray before the fourth quarter really struggled in this game, and then he finally took over in the fourth quarter. Michael Porter Jr. 5 points. Aaron Gordon did not have that same impact as he did, especially in that game one first quarter where he was absolutely fantastic. Those guys just didn't get into their flow. And what was the case? Because you forced Nikola Jokic to take those shots. And sure, he killed you, but like you said, you're gonna have to live with that. And the Miami Heat were able to handle that, and not only handle it, they were able to still pick up the win. And I think that again is going to be a massive key going to this. And you just need, just like the Denver Nuggets, and how they need to get everyone else involved. We see the best Miami Heat team when everyone is involved, and so far, especially in Game 2, they are able to do that. And just like again, I can't stress this enough. The coaching adjustments from my Miami Heat side is just absolutely vital. Taking out Caleb Martin out of the starting lineup because he struggled in game one, knowing the type of matchup they had, inserting Kevin Love. Sure, he didn't shoot great from the field, but that type of matchup is what's going to help you move forward in this series to like just match up better with the Denver Nuggets in the more physical aspect because Caleb Martin is not going to be able to handle as seen in game one a lot of times. Aaron Gordon in the post. So what? Put in Kevin Love. That's a massive plus. But Jay, sticking with the Miami Heat, we mentioned him very quickly and the potential of him coming back in Game 3. Tyler Hero, yes, the guy who broke his hand in the was it Game 1 of the first round?
Hmm.
Am I wrong? No, so I'm right. Um, he might be back the next game, and there's always like this kind of concern whether you bring in especially someone like of Tyler Hero's caliber, a borderline all-star, you bring him into the fray, and everything just seems like they're humming for the Miami Heat. You bring in Tyler Hero, who is someone's and his game like requires a lot of shot attempts, a lot of attention on the offensive end. If you're the Miami Heat, how would you try to incorporate him into this offense where everything seems pretty much all good right now? I mean, you're adding, yeah, it sounds like great on paper. Oh, you're adding Tyler Hero, a 20 point per game scorer, but sometimes it's not as easy as just saying that adding 20 points.
I think you make a really great point there, and I think that's the question that Eric Spoelstra is going to have to ask himself. Because right now, when you talk about the kind of guys that are going to take a hit minutes wise, if you bring back Tyler Hero, it's either Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, or Kyle Lowry. I think those are the main three guys that are probably going to end up seeing a dock in minutes if you bring a guy like that back. Because I feel like although Kevin Love can be picked on defensively, he is huge as a rebounder for this team. He led the team in rebounding coming out of this game, and that big body next to Bam Adebayo is super helpful when you talk about a team that needs to be able to hit the glass. When you talk about guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and Kyle Lowry, those are all the offensive creators at the guard position outside of Jimmy Butler that you've been asking a lot of throughout this entire postseason to not just create for themselves, but kind of create for others in a sense with their gravity. Maybe not necessarily in terms of getting assists and stuff, but their gravity from beyond the arc has been huge. That's a scary thing with a guy like Tyler Hero because he's a threat from back. He's a threat from beyond the arc for sure, but he's not a guy that I think people respect enough to give them the kind of gravity that makes it where they can play off of them and give other opportunities. Tyler Hero is a much better off the bounce trying to create for himself. He's much more of a threat as a guy who tries to push the ball downhill, kind of shot create in a way similar to Jimmy Butler, but I think just not as crafty in terms of things like being able to draw fouls. But that puts him in a weird spot. I think the guy who ends up taking the most of a hit is probably Kyle Lowry, but I don't know if you can afford that when you think about what Kyle Lowry's presence defensively is. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do because I feel like as like you mentioned before, and a great point is it might sound great from a name value standpoint to say, oh yeah, we're bringing back Tyler Hero, but let's also remember what his injury is. Right hand surgery was what he had to get in order to put himself back in a solid position, right? Is he going to be a threat as a shooter? That's something that's going to be really important if they're going to be able to hang with Denver offensively. I see a world where if Tyler Hero does get PT, he maybe plays just as much as Duncan Robinson does, maybe about 15 minutes. Maybe he bites into a little bit of Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent. Maybe he bites into their minutes, but he doesn't necessarily absorb anybody's playing time because we just need to see, is he really a threat offensively the way we've seen him in the past? Because if he can't be a threat offensively with his play style, like you mentioned, a high volume guy, if you can't be a threat, we got to go with the way that's been working.
Yeah, and I love that point, especially there. You just like you have with everyone else in this roster, you have to put Tyler Hero in a position where he is getting his shots and he's getting his minutes within the flow of the team. You're not taking away from anything, and you're not adding something that's going to take away from like the elements that made you successful coming into the series. Tyler Hero, like we mentioned, is a high volume scorer, someone who demands a lot of attention on the offensive end, just trying to get himself going. But it is a broken right hand injury. That is his dominant hand, and we don't know how effective he is going to be. And I think that Eric Spoelstra knows this, and I think that he doesn't have like the fear of doing this compared to someone like a Darvin Ham who didn't let go of the D'Angelo Russell leash. I mean, this guy was still playing like 20 minutes a game, and he was like one of the worst players on the court the entire series. When you look at someone like Eric Spoelstra, especially in an NBA Finals series, someone who knows that each game matters to the highest extent, he's going to have a short leash on Tyler Hero. It's not going to be like, oh, this is our former sixth man of the year. Oh, he has 23 points a game. We can't, we're going to have to keep him in because we know he's going to get there eventually. You can't afford that. You can't afford that in a series, especially, again, in a 7-game series. Each game matters so much in the NBA Finals. You got to go with what's working. And yes, if Tyler Hero's available, use him. It's a good problem to have. You have one of your best, technically one of your top 3 best players on your team returning to your lineup. So it's a good problem to say, oh, should we play him? Should we not? See how he is. See how he goes into the flow of the offense. If he's not getting it, 10, 15 minutes, pull him. That's just something you have to do. And I think that Eric Spoelstra has the respect of the Heat bench, the respect of just the Heat players in general, to know that whatever decision he makes, whether it's a lineup change, whether it's like adding or subtracting minutes, he has the trust of his players. And I think that Tyler Hero, knowing the magnitude of the situation and knowing what is at stake, especially here at an NBA championship, he's going to understand that. So that's the way you have to go about this Tyler Hero situation. You just got to bring him in within the flow of the team. You can't be like, okay, we have to force him in. Oh, we have to give him his mandatory 30 minutes a game. That's just not going to work, and that's not going to bring him the W's. If he's killing it, play him 25, 30 minutes because he can be an absolute game changer. And to be honest, there's going to be some games, if he is flowing, can match up to someone like a Jamal Murray. So, like, if you have that potential there, sure, use it. But if it's not coming up, potential is not very useful in a play in a final situation. So go with what's working. If Caleb Martin gets a shot back and it means that Tyler Hero has to be removed from the court, especially in timely scenarios in the fourth quarter, do that. Caleb Martin has proven time and time again that he has been able to make shots and make the right plays when it matters. Trust your gut, trust your team. They've been able to get you here. Adding someone like Tyler Hero is going to be a massive plus, but do it with a short leash. You cannot afford to make any sort of real mistakes here if you want to win an NBA championship.
Yeah.
But moving forward to, I guess we talked a lot about the Miami Heat, the Denver Nuggets side. Jay, like, is there anything how do they do you know there's some sort of way they're going to be able to fix this like issue where the Miami Heat are focusing on Nikola Jokic or letting him become the scorer? What does the Denver Nuggets have to do to kind of get everyone back into the flow of the offense?
Well, I think it's 2 things. The first thing is that I mentioned in our preview for this series that Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown were going to be huge in terms of setting physical tone for the Denver Nuggets against this team. And what happened in game 1, Aaron Gordon came out swinging. And although he had a very light second half to that game, Him coming out for a quick 12 points, all on dunks and layups in that first half was huge for setting a physical tone for the Denver Nuggets. That's something else that they're going to need between Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, and Bruce Brown in particular, who are all guys who play a lot bigger than their size sometimes, specifically Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown. Those are guys on the perimeter that I think if they play up and they play with physicality that matches the effort and the energy, going back to that effort word that Mike Malone was talking about in the post-game presser, if they play up to that and they help with setting that physical tone, that is going to be huge for them being able to be on a similar level as the Miami Heat, because that's how the Heat have been punching folks in the mouth all summer long, bro. They've been doing that by simply being much more physical and having a lot more intestinal fortitude, so to speak, against some of these other more talented teams. The other thing is we need MPJ locked in, bro. We need MPJ locked in, because I'm going to tell you this right now. Bruce Brown had 9 shots. Michael Porter had 8. Aaron Gordon had 7 shots. Michael Porter had 8.
Yes.
Michael Porter Jr. as a third option cannot be in the same realm offensively in terms of his aggression as a shooter if he is going to take 8 shots and 6 of them come from beyond the arc. This is a big-time rise and shoot, mid-range shoot guy. This is a 6'8" wing who can put the ball on the floor. Yes, he has one of the smoothest strokes in the NBA. I'll give him that. But this is a guy who can rise above at 6'8" and create for himself offensively. He is the third offensive option for this team in terms of skill set and his ability to create for himself. If he is taking less shots than Bruce Brown and almost as many as Aaron Gordon, he is not being aggressive enough as an offensive threat. I understand that Nikola Jokic took 28 shots, and for good reason, in a game like this. But when over half of your shots are all coming off from beyond the arc, as a guy in Michael Porter Jr., where in a matchup like this, the Miami Heat are running 3-guard lineups where they are significantly smaller across the board, you have to be a guy that exploits that matchup. In a matchup like this one, in terms of the starting lineup alone, I'm sure that Kevin Love was getting a ton of the assignment on this one. That's probably part of the reason why Kevin Love was so effective on the defensive glass, right? Was because Michael Porter Jr. is not much of a threat in terms of being active on the glass. But I do think that going back on the opposite end and attacking Kevin Love as an option, that's a defensive weak link in their starting 5. He would probably, I mean, you could argue Gabe Vincent, but I think Gabe Vincent's effort level helps out in that department. So I would say in the starting lineup that they ran out most recently in game 2, Kevin Love would have been the guy to pick on. The matchup in that circumstance that fits best in favor of that is Michael Porter Jr. being much more active offensively, not just as a ball handler, but a pick and roll, pick and pop option. Like I said, I think the biggest things that need to happen is Michael Porter Jr. needs to be much more effective, and the physicality and effort level. Again, I'm going to piggyback on Michael Malone in this one, because I think the effort level in game 2 is something that's huge. I understand that Yoke is Yoke. I get that Jamal Murray is big time in the postseason. These other guys have to be locked and loaded. KCP, 1 for 3 from beyond the arc. Bruce Brown, 1 for 3 from beyond the arc. Michael Porter Jr., 1 for 6, from beyond the arc. That's a combined 3 for 12 from beyond the line. That means those 3 guys alone missed almost as many 3-point shots as the Miami Heat knocked down for the game. Yeah. Right? That's huge. That's a huge discrepancy for a team like the Denver Nuggets that can put up points in a hurry. Those guys have to be locked in.
Yeah, 100%. Michael Porter Jr. needs to have the offensive freedom to be able to get his own, to get his, basically. He's a $25 million per year player. You expect him to be your number 3 option. You want him to take the next step in his game. I know Nikola Jokic is Nikola Jokic. Like you mentioned, you had to play through him this entire game, or else you wouldn't have been in close proximity to the Miami Heat. But in order for this team, and in order for the passing lanes to open, for the spacing to work, you need other guys being threats as shot creators. Jamal Murray wasn't that threat until the 4th quarter. Michael Porter Jr. was not a threat at all in that department. You need these guys taking their shots. And like I said, it's hard to say that because you run your offense through arguably the best player in the league. Why would you not want the ball in the best player in the league's hands? But sometimes, in order to, like for like the Miami Heat are trying to force here, is that this team works best when Nicole works. Our way to beat them is to make sure that Nikola Jokic is the one who's taking all the shots away from Murray, Porter, all those guys. If as long as those guys are still taking their shots and becoming that threat, everything else opens up. That means hitting the shots and making sure that when you have the ball at times, Michael Porter, you gotta shoot. You gotta let it fly. You gotta get to the rim and put that pressure on the interior of the Miami Heat. That and just stop making stupid mistakes. There were like I swear to you there were like 3 plays where Denver Nuggets players were just late on the contest and fouling 3-point shooters or just getting and just like wrapping guys up for no reason. They got 5 team fouls in the fourth quarter within the first 2.5 minutes. That type of stuff cannot happen in the NBA Finals. You got, like you mentioned, they got to stay locked in. They got to know their defensive assignments, and they got to communicate. One of our issues with the Denver Nuggets going into the playoffs was, can their defense hold up? And their defense has improved exponentially within these playoffs, and that's why they're able to make it to the finals. This game against the Miami Heat kind of showed some of those bad habits from late into the regular season that made us worry about the Denver Nuggets in the first place. We know that they're able to get to that point, to like a better place defensively, and they need to get to that. But I do agree with your point too. Jamal Murray has to be aggressive early and often. Same thing with Michael Porter Jr. They want him to be the third star for a reason. They need him to be a near 20 point per game scorer and just going forward in order for them to really like establish themselves as an elite team for years to come. They got to have the confidence in himself and stop like deferring to Nikola Jokic, even though he is capable. You're just falling into the Miami Heat's hands, and you got to sometimes force your hand as some of the best perimeter creators on the Denver Nuggets. So yeah, do you think like when you look into these next game, going back to Miami, by the time we get back to Denver, quick question before we move on to the coaching changes. When we go back to Denver in Game 5, do you see the series tied, or do you think that one team is going to take the next 2 wins?
I think that, man, that's brutal. I think there's a world where you go back to Denver with it 2-2. I think there's a world where I think someone's gonna have to string together 2 back-to-back. I just don't know if it's just yet. I picked I picked Denver in 6, but it's because I expected Miami, if they're going to get their wins, to strike early. And so far, so good, right? My assumption, and I remember mentioning this on the podcast, my assumption was that one of their best chances was either game 1 or game 3 to really strike early in terms of setting the tone for this series. Because at some point, I figured that this was going to be a vulnerable Denver Nuggets team, either that being in game 1 coming off the break or in game 3 heading to Miami after facing a Denver Nuggets team that has dominated at home throughout this postseason. Miami was able to get their business done. Granted, it wasn't in game 1, but they did it in game 2. Now they head to Miami. Whoever wins game 3 is able to regain some kind of momentum. I think that there's a world where this whole thing doesn't really start to make sense for one team in particular until we head back to Denver in game 5.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I honestly think there's a really good chance that the Miami Heat take Game 3 and Miami going back there at home, and the Denver Nuggets are gonna have to make those adjustments in Game 4. So yeah, I honestly believe that by the time we get to Denver, it's gonna be a best of 3 series. I think both of these teams are just, especially their coaches, are just such great tacticians, and they know how to like move their like pieces here and there, and to like really like try and like get the advantage over the other one. And I think that's going to be extremely key to like really look out for in these next 2 games. What are the matchups they're going to have? What changes in the rotation? Who's going to get like more minutes here? How much the Tyler Hero factor is going to affect the whole thing? That's going to be very interesting to see. And I think that both these coaches are just as good at each other, like are some of the best in the league at making those adjustments. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see which team comes out on top, especially in a game 3 where you mentioned before the series, it's extremely pivotal. And especially now in a 1-1 series, this could really like change momentum, especially if the Heat can get back-to-back wins. But yeah, If you have any thoughts on the NBA Finals, let us know down below. Jay, are you ready to move on to the next topic?
Yes, sir.
More coaching changes has happened. I swear every week we have like a new batch of coaching hires, and it's nothing different for this week. We have two new coaching hirings that we're going to be talking about here. The first one being Frank Vogel signing with the Phoenix Suns. He last coached the Los Angeles Lakers the season prior to this season, and he was, and everyone remembers him for winning the NBA championship in the bubble, making the Lakers the best defensive team in basketball. Now moving on to the Phoenix Suns. Jay, your thoughts on this hire?
I think it's big time. I think in a weird way, he's a guy who fits what they really need help with. First of all, Frank Vogel has had to manage personalities before. The biggest personality in the NBA at that with LeBron James. I think Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are much more manageable as individual personalities than guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I think one of the other things is we saw that Frank Vogel was able to thrive in a situation where maybe he did not have the most highly talented environment in terms of the groupings that he had to coach. Now, granted, he was maybe given the short end of the stick during that time frame, but I think that considering the circumstances of having to reintegrate a guy or having to, integrate a guy like Russell Westbrook into a roster that didn't fit well with his skill set alongside a group of individuals that weren't necessarily the most talented roster in the world, I think Frank Vogel did a relatively decent job getting them to what was it, the first round of the NBA playoffs at the time against the Phoenix Suns. Granted, the series didn't go as well, but let's look at the circumstances. Um, I think another thing that's super important is Frank Vogel brings a defensive mentality, which I think is going to be huge because I think I mentioned this to you when we were talking about the potential coaching hires and what Frank Vogel brings to the table to a team like Phoenix is the idea that Phoenix has the offense figured out between Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, CP3, DeAndre Ayton. And granted, there might be a world where DeAndre Ayton and CP3 don't play on this team next season, at least maybe not the entire year. But
Yeah.
I think even if that's the case, there's going to be much more defensive, 3 and D defensive based personnel that they target in terms of guys they would want to acquire in the trade market for a guy like DeAndre Ayton or like a Chris Paul. Those are guys that they are going to want to target. I think if you can get Frank Vogel a 3 and D caliber cast around two offensive juggernauts in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, this dude could be cooking with grease in terms of what he has the capability to do. I don't think that team in the bubble that they won the championship with was the most talented team in the NBA at the time. But guess what? You had two superstars, you had a handful of big time veteran guys, and a handful of dudes that committed on the defensive end and were able to shoot the three ball at a high clip, and they won the whole dang thing. This is potentially a similar scenario. They do have the flexibility again with having DeAndre Ayton and Chris Paul on a partially guaranteed contract that they could fully guarantee in terms of like again, I think it's either what they pay him 15 million to not play for them or 30 million to play for him for a little while and potentially be utilized as a trade asset. It's an interesting situation to have to look into, but I think that they have the mobility on the roster with a handful of different moves they can make to really fill out the depth on this team, something they lacked after the Kevin Durant trade, and give Frank Vogel something really to work with. But hey, Frank is coming into a situation with two superstars. Most coaches would say that's a great way to start your new job.
100%. This goes back to the conversation we've had in the past. It's not about the big three. It's not about the super teams in the past. What works is these two-headed monsters, and you just fill out the rest of the team with these really solid role players and high-end starters. The Chris Paul could potentially be on the move. DeAndre Ayton could potentially be on the move. You trade those guys, you can get some damn good players back, or you at least some like high-end like role players, low-end type of starters that can really fit around a Kevin Durant, Devin Booker led offense. Whether Chris Paul or DeAndre Ayton are in the team or not come the start of the season, their offense is going to be there. We've seen that in the playoffs. That's when you have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. That is an offense onto itself. The defense is what the problem was, and you just did not have the defensive personnel to deal with Honestly, anyone on that Denver team. Literally no one. DeAndre Ayton supposed to stop Jokic? Nah. None of that stuff was gonna happen with the players that they had on the team. Now they have a chance to rewrite those wrongs to try and like really fill out this team in a way, like you mentioned, similar to the Los Angeles Lakers team. You had LeBron, you had Anthony Davis, you had those guys who were gonna lead your team offensively, and of course Anthony Davis being their defensive anchor. But then you've got the Kuzmas, the Carusos. You have all those type of guys filling out the rest of your roster, and they were just know how to play their role. The Phoenix Suns, even by the second round, they had no idea what the rotation was. And it was changing every single game because they were still trying to figure themselves out. Now, with this opportunity offseason to grow as a team, to figure out the rotations, to make some internal changes to this roster, mixed in with a team who, who has been able to deal with these type of scenarios in the past, a defensive-minded head coach who took honestly even the Los Angeles Lakers team. If you look at the talent on that roster, that's not a number one defense in basketball. But Frank Vogel elevated it to that. He had the scheme, he had the mindset to help them become that. Not only were they the number one team in the bubble year, they were still the number one team the following year after that, even when they were like the 7th seed and they lost. They got who was it? Who they got swept by a team in the first round? I forgot. Was it the Phoenix Suns?
Wasn't it Phoenix? Yeah, I was
Was
gonna
it
say,
Phoenix?
wasn't it Phoenix?
Yeah, I think it was like a they got. I think they got like they got whacked like in like 5 or 6 games or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was
So
5. Yeah.
yeah, or 5 games. So like they still made that team the number one defense in basketball. So it doesn't take too much for Frank Vogel's scheme to really do well on the defensive end. You just got to give him at least some of those pieces. And I think with trades with DeAndre Ayton, potentially with Chris Paul, and being able to keep those two stars in Devin Booker and KD, there's something there. And I think that with some more changes that come this offseason, which is definitely going to be coming, I think this team could be really good with Frank Vogel at the head of the snake over there. But speaking of Phoenix, their coach has found a new home in Detroit on, I think, what, the biggest contract in NBA history?
Yeah, man.
6 years, $78 million for Monty Williams to be signed by the Detroit Pistons. Jay, Monty going to Detroit, a young team, a fresh start. How do you like it for them?
Man, I was looking at their cap space the other day. You know, if Monty was a player for this team, he'd be the second highest per year paid player on this team. That man per year is getting paid more than Cade Cunningham until 2024, 2025. That dude came back for the bag. You could tell that this was a guy they definitely wanted for
Yeah.
sure. Because out of all of the head coaches on the market, I believe Monty Williams was the one guy who was truly rumored to potentially take the year off. He was one of the guys that seemed the most committed to the idea of potentially taking a break. But if you're gonna throw that level of bag and that level of job security at me, hey man, you got to think about the circumstance. You know, the funny part about it is, as a Chicago Bulls fan, is also, I think, ironically, we might have the worst coach in the division now, which is also kind of tough when you really think about the circumstances.
Yeah, yeah.
No offense to my man's Billy Donovan, he's that guy, but I think when you look at the grouping going on now, it's not looking too good for the Bulls,
Yes.
just from a head coaching perspective in terms of the talent out there in the Central as well. So I think one of the biggest things that I think about when it comes to the Detroit Pistons is they have serious foundation, man. You talk about what they've got with Jalen Duren being huge as a project piece. Cade Cunningham, we didn't get to see his full second season. We didn't get to see what a pairing with him and Jaden Ivey really looks like. But I think that gave a lot more time to see the growing pains for Jaden Ivey as an on-ball creator. That's huge for them. They unfortunately dropped down to the 5th overall pick in this year's draft. I think that definitely takes them as a hit. But I think they've got a couple of options. They've got a Thompson twin that they could take a really big look at. I think they would be really interesting for a couple of different prospects. Maybe we'll get into draft talk more specifically when it gets closer to that time. But there's a handful of different prospects I'm really intrigued about that could fit alongside of Cade Cunningham, alongside of Jaden Ivey. They've got a young guy in James Wiseman looking to rebuild his stock as an NBA player after being taken, at the top of the draft only a couple of years ago. Monty has a lot of job security. He has a lot of moldable pieces. And he's a guy who I think does bring culture and stability to a team. We have to remember that before Monty Williams showed up, the Suns were not the most stable
Yeah.
franchise. And I know everybody wants to attest that Chris Paul was a huge contributor to that team. And yes, he was in terms of the culture establishment there. But I think that what Monty Williams did, specifically during that bubble run where they were, remember the 7-0 bubble run for the Phoenix Suns, they didn't make the postseason, but everybody was like, we need to take that run and really think about what this could mean for that team moving forward now that they've instilled some confidence in themselves, especially with a young superstar in Devin Booker, seeing what playoff caliber basketball can look like, because those were do or die games they were playing in the bubble in terms of their postseason hopes. And we saw what that ended up culminating into. I think that the Detroit Pistons are in a similar circumstance. Funny enough, this is the sick part about it, bro.
Yeah.
I think the biggest roadblock for the Detroit Pistons isn't their talent developing, isn't the rest of the league being so good. Their biggest roadblock might be their GM, Troy Weaver. Believe it or not. And the reason why I say that he might be their biggest roadblock is because Troy Weaver is an out of the box general manager. He has been a guy who has this weird obsession with second year projects, second and third draftee guys. He has an absurd obsession with the big man position, for example.
Yes.
Marvin Bagley, Jalen Duren, who they traded up for, if I'm not mistaken, with the New York Knicks, I believe, was a part of all of.
Yes, I think so.
As well as getting a guy in, like I mentioned beforehand, I'm talking about James Wiseman. Like, they have Isaiah Stewart. Like, they've got a ton of bigs on this roster, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot that they could do moldability-wise, but I think Troy Weaver needs to pick a direction. And I don't know if delving into the second and third draft big man market is your best way to build around a big-time commodity in Cade Cunningham. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Duren was a great pickup. I think Isaiah Stewart is developing very well. I think Bojan Bogdanovic was a little bit of a reach, but I could see what he can contribute to a team that young, because we see in Houston not having any vets is very detrimental as opposed to having a few vets who might play a little bit more than you would like, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of different things that I like about what Detroit's doing, but I think that the most important part is Troy Weaver needs to pick a lane and stick to it. And I don't know if the big man market lane is the one he needs to be in. So I'm hoping that Monty Williams can bring a little bit of stability to that. I think that'll be huge.
Yeah, 100%, because that's exactly what he brought to the Phoenix Suns organization. Exactly. And it's, again, maybe he didn't take them over the top. Maybe he didn't get them to eventually where they wanted to be, which is the NBA championship. But he laid the foundations. He laid something for like a place where people want to be in. And I think that's what they really need there in Detroit. Just some stability. And I think with him working with the front office now with Troy Weaver, I think those issues that you were talking about, like trying to like experiment with the big man position and all that, I think that comes to a stop this year. Because once you get to training camp and once you get to the early days of the regular season, Monty Williams, once he has like a complete roster in front of him with the guys that he for sure is gonna play, he's gonna know who's gonna be able to like make the cut for the rotation, who's not, and that's gonna make the decision even easier for Troy Weaver and the Detroit Pistons front offense to make the necessary moves in order to move off the so-called dead weight, because not all of these guys are gonna be able to play. I know Marvin Bagley, like you said, is a top 2 pick. James Wiseman, top 2 pick, this and that. Not all of these big men can play, and honestly, out of all of them, the 2 guys they drafted, Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren, are the most consistent out of all of them. So eventually, the bat is going to weed itself out, and they're going to figure out, okay, who's going to be here long term, and who are some guys we're going to have to move for potential veteran pieces, for potential guys for potential draft picks to move on in the future. Because honestly, with the talent that this Detroit Pistons team can have, I can see them making like an OKC type run this year. Like if with the right coach, and now having Steven Silas as their top assistant coach, which I just saw that they just hired a couple hours ago. The Dallas Mavericks did something special the year that Steven Silas was did some like special things with like him as a top assistant, being able to get the best out of the role players. You can see stuff like that forming there with the Detroit Pistons with Monty Williams at the helm. So When you have that, and you have the talent you already have there in Kate Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and all them, with the potential fifth overall pick, whether it's again like you said, the Thompson twins, Cam Whitmore, all any of those type of dudes, there is some potential there, and you have to let them ride. You got to commit to them. You can't be saying, "Oh, we have some guys here that potentially could take your spots." Like, and that's like you need to weed out those guys and like try and trade them for what you can, because there's a reason Marvin Bagley was dealt with so easily away from the Sacramento Kings, and after that, look where the Kings are now. They're in a better position. The Warriors, they realized they could not like get like the best out of James Wiseman. What did they do? Get rid of him. There's a Troy Weaver. I appreciate the optimism. I
Mhm.
appreciate the optimism, but now with like now you're getting yourself a legit coach. Now you're trying to like really revamp this coaching staff. You got to make some decisions. And I think that seeing where Wiseman and Bagley in their development are is going to be very key to whether Troy Weaver makes the move or not. And again, they just need to give him like a what do you call it? You got to give him a consistent unit out there, and I think Monty Williams can do what he can to get the best out of them. So I think it's a good hire, but like you mentioned, you just got to make sure that you have like a group of guys that Monty Williams can have control over and say these are the guys who I think should be with us long term and like let us like that we can ride with for the season. These other guys do what you want with them, but they're not going to be a part of this rotation.
Yeah, and I think just to go back to what you just said about just being able to identify what talent really progresses in terms of their long-term plans, Monty clearly has the control from that perspective in terms of his job security. 6 years of security for in terms of what he has contractually, that puts him in a really good spot because for them to offer him that much money, that kind of job security in terms of the length of his contract, that means they understand that this is something that they're looking to build over time. I don't think this is necessarily a hire that makes it where they want to turn into a championship contender overnight because they have a top five pick. They have a former number one overall pick in Cade Cunningham, a top pick in Jaden Ivey, and money to spend. I don't think that's what this hire means. I think this hire is we need a big boy adult in the room with a certain kind of voice, a certain kind of talent for being able to galvanize young guys to play and develop at a high rate. And I think their focus I think you made a really great analogy here. The Oklahoma City Thunder model is the blueprint right now.
Yeah.
You got to think about not just what they're doing personnel wise with all the 6'7", the 6'8" guys with length, play basketball with a high IQ, different things like that. It's also their developmental curve that they're playing with. The idea of letting the young guys learn and develop over time and being able to grow within their positions and build up internally. These teams, we got to remember, we talked about this a good handful of times. This CBA was nicknamed the Super Team Killer, bro. It was named the Super Team Killer. That's because of the idea that the NBA is trying to promote more internal growth within these organizations to prioritize the guys that they develop, to prioritize the guys that they sign and that they draft, to prioritize the idea of focusing on the idea of parity and spread out superstardom throughout the league. That means that the coaching element of these basketball teams, it becomes that much more important. We always would say that talent wins basketball games in a league of this caliber. We also say that the most talented players are typically the ones that win championships in this league. We're going to get to a point where talent is only going to carry you but so far. Shoot, we look at the NBA Finals right now.
Yeah.
Yes, some would argue that Nikola Jokic may be the best player in the league right now, but before the postseason started, guess what? Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets might not have been the fifth best team in terms of who we regarded for championship odds going into these playoffs. That
Yeah.
goes to tell you that the development of the roster around Jokic means so much more to this roster than just Jokic as an individual entity. Yes, we just argued this with Marcus on his podcast. Shout out to them. Shout out to his podcast. But Jokic is super important to the overall
Yeah.
fulcrum of them being a championship contender, having that guy. Same thing with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I think, is that guy. I think for the Detroit Pistons, they view Cade Cunningham as that guy. But you know what's super important? The individual development of those guys around them within the roles that fit next to that guy
Yeah.
in order for you to be a championship team, not just for one season, but over longevity. The Denver Nuggets have always been in the mix and have always had a crack at it for the last 3 to 4 seasons. This happens to be the year where everything is culminating in one place, and now they have a chance at winning a championship. I think similar to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where you are now with your analogy with that, they've been culminating this idea of quote unquote tanking their way through, but I think it's viewed more as development stages. And they are now, this past season, they were a team that almost made the playoffs off the strength of simply developing their talent internally. I think, kind of to wrap my whole soliloquy up, I think that Detroit is looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder model and sees a lot of themselves, maybe not in terms of having a million draft picks, but in terms of developing their talent internally. They see themselves as another blank canvas to work with, similar to that team.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you talked about the Denver Nuggets, you talked about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Both their coach has been in the system for like 8 years. Michael Malone has spent 8 years, seven, I think 6, 7 years coaching this team. And Mark Daniel of the Oklahoma City Thunder, sure, he only became the head coach of the team in 2020, but he coached their he coached their G League team from 2014 to 2019, was their assistant coach from 2016 to 2020. This type of stuff, man, working with these guys on a long-term plan, giving Monty Williams the 6 years is key here. You just have to make sure that you know which guys you want to be along for the ride for the 6 years and develop them. That's why it's key to just weed out the people that you don't want to be there. And this season's gonna really showcase which ones are gonna be a part of that long-term rebuild. They're not gonna win like 40 games like the Thunder did this year, but they could get to that point pretty quickly if you just let Monty do his thing and let these guys grow together. I think there's a chance, and I think that this is a great hire. You just have to give him time, and you're giving him a long leash with a 6-year deal. You have to, excuse me for using this term, but you got to let Monty cook. You got to let him cook. You got to let him cook, and I think that it's gonna be a good move. And I think that the Detroit Pistons, once they make those moves, they're gonna be able to have like a clear direction going forward, and it's going to be a good team It's going to be a good team in the next couple of years for sure. But yeah, any thoughts on these coaching hirings? Let us know down below in the comment section below. We are going to move on to the final two topics of the show. And for the first time in forever, we're going to have the draft and the quiz back on the pod. We're going to start with the draft because this might be the most crazy draft that we've ever done. Jay.
Oh, man.
I don't know how much of a fan he is of this. He's had to bring out it's like one of those movies where you have to bring up the gigantic map, trying to figure out
I'm sweating over here, bro.
This guy is like super nervous about this. But today's draft, we are gonna make a starting five with a 6-man with one player from each continent. Of course, not on Antarctica. I don't think there's any players from Antarctica, but 6 continents in the world. We're going to draft one player from each of these and try to be the best team possible. Jay, how you feel?
I am so nervous, man. Geography on the pod was not one of those I expected when I signed up for this podcast, man, but we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work.
What's funny about this is that it's going to be interesting to see which continents we go for first. Because I have a feeling that we're gonna we don't care which North American player we get. We're gonna get whatever for that. I think we're gonna get that last. But is Jeremy Lin gonna be the number 1 overall pick? Who knows?
What the heck?
Who knows? I don't think so either. But I think it's gonna be a very interesting draft, like I mentioned. So the 6 continents we're drafting from: Oceania, South America, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. One player from each. Try to beat the best lineup possible. And you know how this draft works. Jay gets the first pick, and then we're going to be doing serpentine, so I get the next 2, he gets the next 2, and so on and so forth. Jay, first pick of the draft. Which continent are you going to?
Oh my God, bro! I've been thinking about this for hours, and I'm still in a tough spot. It's hilarious. Oh man. Holy cow, dude. Whew. I'm gonna go out Africa, man, and I'm going with Hakeem.
Going with
I'm
Hakeem
going with
Olajuwon.
Hakeem. Yeah, I'm locked in on it.
You locking on Hakeem? That is a damn good pick. I mean, borderline top 10 player of all time. You can't hate it. Hakeem Olajuwon
Yeah,
with the first pick in this draft. So Africa's off the board for Jay. Jay,
it's getting
I'm,
ugly.
I'm going to Asia. I'm, I'm going to Asia. And Tim, you went with one Houston Rocket legend. I'm gonna go with the other Houston Rocket big man legend. Give me the 7'6" tower Yao Ming to play at my center position. Asia off the board. I cannot let a Hall of Famer slip through my hands who's from Asia. So give me give me Yao Ming. Hell yeah, I went there. Let's
Oh,
go. So I got Yao Ming with my first pick, which means I get to go with the next one. Okay, you know what's bad when I have to choose. Okay, do I want to go South America next or Oceania, or do I want to go?
yo,
You know
that's
what?
too funny.
You know what? I'm gonna go to South America. Give me Manu Ginobili from Argentina. Manu, either him coming off the bench or playing any of my guard positions. I think he's gonna play fantastic. Hall of Famer, of course, as well in Manu Ginobili, one of the best Spurs players of all time. Him and Yao Ming, that's gonna be a deadly duo. Give me Manu with my second pick.
That's nuts. All right, man. We're gonna go out North Europe with this one, man. We're gonna go over to Germany.
Yes,
We're gonna
sir.
get the big dog Dirk, man. We're gonna get the big men out the way. I feel like this might be a big man littered draft for all I know,
Yes.
especially on my side, because I like drafting the big kids. But I
Yes.
got I got the crazy footwork in the post with Akeem. Give me the shooting and the big body knee from Dirk Nowitzki with the distance. He can give me some spacing. I'm gonna take Dirk out of North Europe.
Very nice. Dirk Nowitzki and Hakeem Olajuwon. That is a filthy front court for sure. You definitely got the talent advantage over me, but I got the best players from like South America. So good luck
Oh
with
my
that once you get
gosh.
to that point. But good picks nonetheless. I get the next pick over here. And you know what? There's a couple ways I want to go with this. Do, do I want to go to Oceania already? That's my question. Do I want to go? You know what?
Yo.
You're gonna have to deal with some big men up front because this is gonna be a freaking battle of the 7 footers or whatever. You got Hakeem and Dirk. I'm going with Yao Ming and Joel Embiid at the power forward position.
Ooh.
Joel Embiid from Cameroon, the big man from Cameroon. Technically, one day he can he. You know what's funny with Joel Embiid? He could technically be eligible for 3 continents eventually because he's apparently eligible for the France national team, for the USA national team. It's whatever, but he still resides in Cameroon. Give me Joel Embiid with my third pick, which means I have to go with my fourth pick. And you know what? I'm okay with whoever I get from Oceania. I think I'm gonna go to Europe now. And for Europe, give me. Oh, there's some good choices here. Do I? I'm really tempted of going just hella big. Or I could go with one of the best players in the NBA today. Give me Luka Doncic to run my point guard.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Whew. Oh man.
Good luck with Asia, bro. Good luck trying.
Oh, okay. So let me think about something real quick because again, we're doing geography on the pod. So let me slide real
Yeah.
quick. In terms of everything we've chosen, is France still on the table?
No, they're not.
I didn't think so, but I was a little nervous about
Yeah.
that. Oh man, oh man. But we both get an American player though, right?
Yeah, we
We
get
both
one
get
South American. We get one South American, one North American.
one South American, one North American. Okay, got you. Okay. I might have to get my South American out the way because I feel like Asia is just gonna be just too easy at this point.
Yeah.
Oh man, let me think. Actually, actually, I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, Nah, Asia is actually kind of dicey because Jeremy Lin might actually be like the greatest choice, despite the fact that I'm looking at this all Asia slash Oceanic team, and I'm liking Hito Turkoglu from Turkey, low key. I'm kind of liking that, but I'm not sure how I feel about it just yet. Oh my gosh.
There's Rui Hachimura. Technically, Jordan Clarkson is Filipino descent, so I would allow it. There's Jalen Green, who's also Filipino descent, rocking out with my Filipinos over there.
Yeah. I get 2 picks back to back, right? Because I
Yeah,
only
you
got
do.
two
You
people
do.
right now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Jeez, this is gonna be tough. Okay, let me get Jalen Green for one of my for the Filipino pick. I
Yeah.
like that one. Jordan Clarkson would have been a good one too, but let me get Jalen Green. Then South America. Oh my goodness, bro. You know what? Bump it. Give me, man. If you know, you know. Let me get Leandro Barbosa real quick. If you
Ooh.
know, you know. If you know, you know.
Phoenix Suns, Leandro
Yeah,
Barbosa
there you
was
go. There
that
you go,
guy.
TV. If you know, you know, my man. If you
Yeah,
know, you know.
that he was that guy back in the day. Love me some Leandro Barbosa. He put like 2 years on the Raptors. He was complete ass, but him on the Phoenix Suns, definitely one of those fun players to watch. I really do like that. Oh boy, this is okay. This is where we're gonna get into the meat and bone of this. I need a forward, and I need either a bench player or another guard because I can play Manu off the bench. I'm telling you right now, I am not going with Ben Simmons. I do not need Ben Simmons on this team. You know what? Since I have back-to-back picks to finish this off, let's do it with this. I'm gonna leave the North American player to last, even though it doesn't really matter. Let's go to Oceania and let me get my utility player. Give me Bo Jingles. Give me Joe Ingles, freaking Utah Jazz legend. Give me him on my team. He could do a little bit of everything. If he could just shoot, if he could just stay in the corner and shoot some threes, throw some of those wicked dimes he used to do, I'm happy with that. Give me Joe Ingles. And then going to North America, we will be running with the one, the only LeBron
That's sick. That's sick.
James.
Oh, that's sick behavior. That's sick behavior.
LeBron.
Oh my gosh.
Was I gonna be a little bit clever and go Canadian? Yes, but no, I'm gonna go LeBron James. Give me LeBron.
Ooh. All right.
I think you're in the same position as me. You have to go Oceania and North America
I
last.
think I literally am too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just gonna create the most toxic duo of all time over again. Give me Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. I didn't even realize. We're like, wait a minute. You just give me the most toxic duo of all time, just again, under much more proper circumstances.
Oh,
Hopefully everyone is healthy. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
look, here's the thing. I was sick in Kyrie, don't mind you, but my team is just wholesome and like, all good vibes. We can't have Kyrie littering this locker room. We need Joe Ingles and we need him to talk shit to KD.
Oh man.
He's gonna actually. You know what's funny? Joe Ingles is probably gonna be the most toxic player on the court. Forget everyone else. He's gonna be the one talking the most shit. I bet you that.
Look,
But
dude, my starting guard was Jalen Green for 20 seconds. I wasn't feeling too hot about that one. Leandro Barbosa was definitely a beastie pick, but at the end of the day, man, I realized my guard help was like pretty dicey there. I'm like, oh crap. I mean, look, Steph Curry would have been a great option too, but I think this team would have went from being really big to being really small all of a sudden. So,
yeah,
you
that's
know.
all cool. That's all cool. All right, we both got our teams ready. Jay, tell me how you're gonna line up this team and basically from like which each of these continents you got these players from.
Oh man, okay. So the continents part is the tough part. Let me make sure I put everybody in where they're gonna be. North America, Asian players gonna
Okay.
be
Actually,
here.
between that, I'll let you do that afterwards. Let me go through my team. At point guard, let me run with the European Luka Doncic. I'm gonna go with my South American at the two position with Manu Ginobili. North American, I gotta go with the best player, arguably the best player of all time, and LeBron James. At the four, give me the man from Cameroon, my African pick. Give me Joel Embiid. I had to take the best Asian player of all time, and it's not at center position. Give me Yao Ming, and off the bench, just for the vibes, just for the ultimate trash talk, give me Joe Ingles from Oceania.
Oh my gosh, bro. Okay. All right. So we're gonna start with Oceania. I'm gonna take Kyrie Irving at my 1. At
Yeah.
my 2 spot, I'm actually gonna keep Leandro Barbosa from South America. I'm gonna keep him at the 2 spot. From North America, Kevin Durant. From Europe, I'm gonna put Dirk Nowitzki at the 4. From Africa, I'm gonna put Hakeem at the 5, and then off the bench from Asia, I'm gonna put Jalen Green.
Very, very nice.
Oh my
Look
god.
at these teams, man. These teams are nuts, man. TV's all world team, Jay's all world team. Let us know down below who you guys got in this matchup. Man, that was a fun ass draft. That was not gonna lie.
Oh my gosh, bro.
Oh yeah, that was a good draft. Let us know who you think has the better team. Now for the last segment of the show, we had to bring it back. We had the draft. Now we're bringing back the quiz. And Jay, this week's quiz again is very much finals related, but it has to do with the 2 teams that are in the finals. It's basically 2 mini quizzes in one. So here we go. I'm gonna ask you to name me the top 5 scorers for both the Nuggets and the Miami Heat in their franchise's history. The top scorers, their top 5. Let's start with the Nuggets, Jay. Who are their top 5 scorers in their team's history?
So it's the top 5 scorers for each team, right? We're
Yeah,
gonna do each team.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew.
Let's start with the Nuggets. Let's see what you got that.
Carmelo Anthony.
Number 3 all time. You got a couple guys from the 80s and 70s, but I think they're like synonymous with the Denver Nuggets.
Alex English.
Number 1 all time.
Allen Iverson.
Nope, he's not on this list.
I guess he didn't play that long. Yeah, I guess it was only like a year, right?
Yeah.
Andre Iguodala.
Nope. There's one more current guy post 2000s, and I mean he's current.
Nikola Jokic.
Nikola Jokic 4th all time. So you're missing 2 guys, one from the 80s, one from the 70s. Both are buckets though. Both are scored a lot for this Denver Nuggets franchise.
Oh, you said one from the 70s, one from the 80s.
One of them scored 73 points in an NBA game one time.
What the heck? 73 points in an NBA game. Okay, we'll come back to that one because I like that hint, but I feel like that's too easy and too hard at the same time. You said 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I think this guy. I think the number 2 guy all time played without English for a couple years. They're both, or actually no, maybe these guys might have played with each other. Who knows? But I mean, like, they're both like around that same like area. They're kind of like, I mean, they're Nuggets legends for sure. Like, they're the only. To be honest, I don't know any other teams they played for besides the Nuggets. These 2 dudes, but they're kind of like they're deep cuts. They're deep cuts for sure.
They're deep. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better about them.
Yeah.
If they're deep cuts. And they're both not from now. Okay.
I want to. Okay, yeah, no. Number 2 all time played from 71 to 85. Yeah, though he was an 8th round pick. Oh my gosh. This guy just he scored a bunch of buckets for the Denver Nuggets. He played with them for like 10 years. If you need his initials, it's DI. I don't know if that helps you in any way possible.
It's DI?
DI.
Oh shoot.
It's tough. I don't blame you if you don't get this one. It's a bit of a deep cut, but
okay, I don't know about DI, but I think the only other person I can think of that was like a scorer for the Denver Nuggets, like back in the day, was like Ralph Sampson.
No, it's not Ralph Sampson that you're thinking of. I know who you're thinking about.
Or am I saying the name wrong?
No, it's I thought it was Ralph Sampson too when I was looking at this list. It's Ralph Simpson.
Simpson. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's on me.
Not him, but he's right behind number 5. Number 5 again, the same guy who scored 73 points in the game. His initials are DT. If that helps out anyway.
Gotta think Nuggets.
Rookie of the year. He's in the Hall of Fame. 5
Oh, okay. Then when you said Rookie of the Year and 73 points, I was like, okay, now I got it. Okay, David Thompson.
David Thompson, yeah, number 5 all time. Number 2 was always going to be the hardest, but I do only like when I looked at the name, okay, I know he only played for the Nuggets basically.
Oh, okay.
If you even if you give up, it's completely fine. It's like it's whatever.
I
But
don't think I'll get like his like last name, but like I mean, like let's think. Which era was this? I'm just gonna I'm
he's
gonna
like
guess like the most basic first name, but I don't know about the last name. Which
it's like he played for the Nuggets late 70s, early 80s.
did I have to assume his name is like Dan or something like that? Only because like 70s, like I don't know.
It
No
is that.
disrespect, but like
It's
I'm just
that.
saying, like
It is that.
it is. Okay,
It is
what's his last name? Because I don't think I
Dan
know.
Issel. Dan Issel.
Nah, I wouldn't have got that. I ain't
Dan
gonna lie
Issel.
to you.
Okay, that's
But
fine.
you said he was from the 70s. I was like, all right, I gotta think of like the list of dudes that would fall under that category.
Exactly. Yeah, but for sure, the Nuggets have been around for a while, for a
Yep.
surprising amount of time. So that's completely fine. This one, I think you should get pretty easily. The Miami Heat. Name
Okay.
their top 5 scorers of all time. Let's see if we can get them.
This one I think is easier for sure.
Yeah.
I think D Wade is on it.
Number 1, of course, it's Dwayne Wade. It's freaking Wade County, bro. It's
Yeah,
there's
true.
no one
Good
win.
point.
Yeah.
LeBron James is on it.
Number 4 all time. I mean, to be fair, they've only been around since the 90s, so I don't think it's like that like too far fetched that you're gonna think of these guys.
Alonzo Mourning played there way too long not to be on it, so he
No,
has to be on it.
number 2 all time, Alonzo.
Yeah, he played on there way too long.
Yes. So yeah, he is number 2 all time.
Hmm.
You're missing number 3 and number 5.
Other synonymous Heat players. That is
One of them definitely didn't play as long as Alonzo Mourning, but he played around like the same time as him. And this guy was like, he's one of those players that if you gave him the green light to shoot now, this guy would be hitting like five threes a game, like five. Like those like he's like one of those type of guys. He's definitely like a '90s Heat player, like a late '90s Heat player.
all right, bet. That's an interesting play. Let me get my other one out the way. I'll guess 2, and then you let me know. The first one is Chris Bosh on it?
Number 5, he just sneaks in. He's
Clutch
number 5 all time.
Okay, there's 2 guys I have in mind for what you just said. The first one is the first guy that comes to mind. Tim Hardaway.
No.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through the list. Let's go through the list. Is Goran on this? Is Goran in there?
Nope. I mean, no. This is like you're missing one guy. And I told you he played for the '90s slash like I think early 2000s for the Heat. So
Glenn Rice?
Glenn Rice,
W's.
number 3 all
I didn't
time.
realize what era you were saying it was from, but
Yeah,
I realized you said Alonzo Mourning. Duh.
Yeah, so yeah, the top 5 all time: Bosch at 5, 4 LeBron James, 3 Glenn Rice, 2 Alonzo Mourning, and number 1 Dwayne Wade. Fun and easy quiz. I don't. Yeah, of course, I wasn't expecting you to get Dan Issel, but like,
Dan Issel is crazy.
yeah, but no,
Yeah.
I mean to be fair, I only know him because if you guys have played NBA 2K, he's like on the all-time Nuggets team, and he's like freaking like high 90s. That's the only reason I know who Dan Issel is.
Hey,
But yeah, second all-time leading scorer, nice. But yeah, that is our quiz. If you have any other quizzes you want us to do, let us know down below. But Jay, another end of another amazing episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to say to these people before we have to sign out?
Man, the series is tied up 1-1. Like I said, by the next time that we record this series, probably will be a lot more interesting than it already is right now. It's going to be really cool to see what dynamics change now that we've seen both teams win in their own unique ways. Stay tuned. Life is starting to make a lot more sense for me in TV these days, which means that there's a lot more content coming, which is also huge as well. We haven't really double recorded too much recently, mainly because the finals takes up a lot of the headlines these days. So we kind of try to sprinkle things in. But TikTok is going to be really huge in terms of some of these smaller news things that dropped. For example, I think the Wizards finally are getting competent for once in their lives with some of their front office hirings and things like that. So that'll be stuff that I think will be interesting to keep tabs on in terms of the social media because we're going to have a lot to say. So for every week that we drop an episode, I think starting next week after when you listen to this, I think you should really start expecting like 2 to 3 vids a day on TikTok. So you guys are going to have a lot of content.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of us on your TikTok and Instagram pages, so be on the lookout for that. If you want to see all of that, follow at Hit Your Free Throws on both of those platforms, as well as remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, as well as the podcast pages. Just show your support in any way possible. But yeah, this is the end of another great episode. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Hope you have a fantastic day. Take it easy. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.